Everyone, welcome to my weekly Facebook Live that I do over here at Your Kick-Ass Life. I'm Andrea Owen, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm doing this a little early. Usually I'm here on Thursdays at noon, but today is a different day at a different time. So hopefully many of you are catching the replay, or hello to those of you who are here live. I'm joined with the lovely Isabel Foxen Duke this week. Hi, Isabel.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, likewise. And if any of you are followers and listeners of the Your Kick-Ass Life podcast, Isabel was a third-time guest this week. And this week, so it was a Wednesday that she was on. We had a really candid conversation about our own stories and our struggles with eating and food and exercise and body image, as well as talked about a topic that Isabel is an absolute expert in, and that is what we're going to dive into again a little bit here. For those of you that may have missed the podcast episode, I will drop it in the comments, as well as for those of you who have no idea what that even is. We wanted to make sure that we kind of hit you from all areas of the internet. So that's what we're here today to do. And I wanted to, let's start from the very beginning, Isabel, and tell people what you mean when you say the words diet mentality. What does that mean?
Okay, so I think that the best way to introduce this concept is to just also go into, like, what is dieting, period, right? I mean, I think that this is a word, people talk about diet binge cycling and diets don't work, and, they kind of throw these terms around in a way where they've sort of lost their meaning. Right? I mean, it's almost like, well, what exactly do we mean by a diet? Like, is a diet just Weight Watchers? Is it just Atkins? It's kind of confusing, I think, to people. Like, is it a lifestyle change? Is it a diet? What's going on here? So I always like to just give sort of a definition of dieting in general. And my definition of dieting is very, very specific. And so when I'm talking about dieting, I'm talking about the thing that doesn't work, right? And my definition of dieting would be any way of eating to which we are emotionally attached, right? To which our self-esteem kind of depends, which for a lot of women is going to be, diets for weight loss, right? Or diets where it's like, oh my gosh, I need to get this right. Otherwise, I'm never going to have the body that I want. And, all hell's going to break loose and I'm never going to find the partner or get the promotion or any number of things that we attach to body size, right? Any number of things that we attach to our body image. So my definition of dieting really starts to go into this sort of emotional realm of, am I emotionally attached to my food looking a certain way? Do I have sort of specific ideas about what's okay and what's not okay, what's right and what's wrong around food? Do I feel badly about myself when I eat a certain way? Do I feel guilty and shameful when I, don't perform eating correctly, however I want to define it, right? And so we're starting to get into a little bit of a bigger picture here about what dieting means and sort of what doesn't work when we talk about things like diet binge cycling, etc., right? What doesn't work is this idea of having a right way and a wrong way to eat, feeling emotionally attached to feeling like I need to eat a certain way, otherwise I'm going to feel terrible about myself, right? So we're getting into this sort of emotional realm. And so a lot of people would call this not just dieting as a physical act, but dieting as a way of thinking, right? Dieting as a way of operating. Diet mentality really being a huge source of a lot of, really the core source of a lot of our struggles around food, rather than just Weight Watchers being the problem or Atkins being the problem or something along those lines. We're talking, much broader and much bigger, really getting to the root of the issue here, where women's struggles with food really begin.
So another thing that I think is a term that gets thrown around a lot is the term emotional eating. So when you were saying that, some of the things that came up for me, and I started thinking about, like, what are the emotions? I think for many people, is it safe to say that anytime you have anxiety around your body size, food, how much you're eating, how much you're not eating, exercise, calories in, calories out, is, fear and anxiety, is that safe to say, like, that's emotional eating?
Well, so emotional eating is a pretty broad term, that's true. I would say emotional eating could be, any way of eating, any sort of form of eating that is emotionally driven, right? So it could be anything from I'm bored, I want a cupcake, to, oh my gosh, I'm so upset with myself that I ate a cupcake, I've fallen off the wagon, I might as well just, throw in the towel and eat 10 cupcakes. And then tomorrow, I swear, I'll never eat another cupcake ever again. Tomorrow will be day one. Right? So emotional eating can kind of be this broad spectrum of things. I sort of make a distinction, though, between the, oh my gosh, I suck, I fell off the wagon, I might as well eat everything that isn't nailed down, and tomorrow I'll start as day one. I sort of make a distinction between that kind of emotional eating, which is really a reaction to diet mentality, right? It's really a reaction to dieting. That it's a way of thinking around food that wouldn't exist if I wasn't struggling with this previously defined diet mentality, versus, I'm bored, I want a cupcake, kind of not that big of a deal, right? I mean, it's something to look at mindfully, like, oh, is that really something that I want? Is it not? But it's not the end of the world, right? I think we really blow up this emotional, this I'm bored, I want a cupcake as being like this horrible thing. And we spend so much time blaming ourselves and shaming ourselves for the fact that sometimes when we're bored or anxious, we want a cupcake. And all that ends up happening when we do all that blaming and shaming is we fall into this reactionary eating, this, oh God, I fell off the wagon, I suck, I might as well have the whole batch of cupcakes and tomorrow I'll never eat another cupcake again, right? So I think that it's important when we're talking about emotional eating to really think about, like, well, what's actually going on here? Am I reacting to diet mentality, right? Am I like blaming and shaming and shooting myself, which does not work and usually leads, honestly, straight up to binge eating in a lot of in most cases, versus, what could have just been, this is the best that I can do today is, I'm having a hard day and, there are lots of ways that I could deal with my feelings. And I will try and explore as many of them as I can. I want to, take care of myself to the best of my ability. But you know what? If this is where I'm at today, if where I'm at today is I need a cupcake, fine. Worse things have happened. And not go down the sort of blame, shame roller coaster ride that usually leads to the whole pan of cupcakes rather than just what could have easily been, this is just where I'm at today. It's no big deal. I'm not off the wagon. I haven't failed at anything. It's just a choice that I'm making today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Great overview of diet mentality. And again, the podcast episode that we did last week, I know that you went into more detail about that, but I think it's good because these terms get thrown around a lot, like emotional eating and diets, and what does that even mean? And I have another question though that we did not go over in the podcast, and that's around the term willpower. That's something that we hear a lot, right? You just need to want it bad enough, and then you can either lose the weight, or you can even, I'm sure that maybe some people have heard who are trying to kind of get out of this cycle. You can just eat right and exercise and stop dieting if you have enough willpower. So why does that not work for everyone?
I mean, just like huge misconception. I mean, the term willpower, I swear to God, I'm like, this term was just invented by the diet mentality. It was invented by the diet industry to sell you something that does not work and then blame you when it doesn't work instead of having to take, blame for themselves. This concept of willpower is really problematic for a variety of reasons. And first off, I would be remiss to not really go into just the physical problems with the term willpower, right? So just from a physical level, we're not talking about emotions, I'm not talking about diet mentality or binge eating or anything, just from a physical standpoint, a biological standpoint, the term willpower is incredibly problematic because eating at the end of the day is a biological instinct, right? It's like breathing, it's like, excuse my language, it's like having sex, getting it on, right? I mean, it's like any number of biological instincts. Eating is very, very, very much an instinct to human mammals. It wasn't actually designed to be fully controlled, right? You have hunger, you have fullness, you have biological urges around food that cannot be controlled just because Dr. Oz told you not to eat the thing, or, you decided that you want to sort of shave off calories to lose weight, right? This is not actually, this is not in alignment with your biological instincts. And typically speaking, biological instincts win. They almost always win. For 95% of people, right? If you try to deny your biological instincts, you're probably going to fail. So this is sort of like number one reason that I think this whole term willpower is really problematic, is it completely denies the reality that you're actually a human mammal, like you're actually an animal. And you have biological instincts around food that can't really be denied. And quite frankly, if you are in that very small percentage of people who are capable of denying your biological instincts and are capable of denying your hunger and denying yourself the foods that your body actually physically wants, even in that case, like I'm not going to call that healthy. I would go ahead and call that very unhealthy, right? It's very, very unhealthy to deny your biological instincts around food. So this whole idea that food is just a matter of willpower sort of completely runs contrary to the idea that I'm actually a human mammal who has biological instincts around food, and that eating is actually a biologically instinctively driven like urge that we need to survive. So that's number one. But then even on an emotional level, right? Like, let's just say you think, oh no, well, I always eat when I'm hungry, I'm giving myself proper nourishment, etc., which I do think is a confusing thing for a lot of people, because a lot of people think that they're getting proper nourishment because they're eating what diet culture tells them to eat. When in fact, actually, I think in many instances, people are not getting enough food when they're quote unquote being good, or whatever the hell they want to call it, right? I think there are many, many instances where people think they should need less than they actually do. But even let's just say, you are in a situation where you are getting physical nourishment. Biological instincts also cross over into the realm of emotions. Right. So if you're experiencing, right, your psychology is part of your bio. One of the things that's so interesting about biological urges around food is that psychology actually affects it. Right. So if you're telling yourself something like, don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake. Yeah, sure. Physically, you probably don't need the cake. Physically, white sugar is not something we need. However, if you're saying don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake over and over and over in your head, right? All your brain is hearing is cake, 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 cake. Like,
delicious cake.
Exactly. So psychology starts to actually, pump up here, right? And so there's sort of these sort of instincts and urges are not necessarily even just about physical need and hunger. They're also about, are you kind of putting yourself in this sort of human cage, which of course, as a human and instinctively, you're going to want to break out of. Right. And so this becomes, it sort of gets complex as far as, what is a choice? Where is there control? And I would make the argument that we have much less control. We certainly have much less control over what we eat than the diet industry would have you believe. Diet industry would have you believe that, you can just choose how many calories you want to eat in a day. And that's not actually true. Most people, if they're denying themselves on various different levels, will end up binging. And those who don't are often usually highly obsessed with food. Many of them are struggling with disordered eating. It's not a pretty picture to be constantly living in self-denial and practicing quote unquote willpower around food.
Wow. I just learned a lot from that, actually. I'm glad I asked that question because, we haven't discussed that before, I don't think. But, willpower. It's one of those words, too, where I feel like it's one of those things where women, well, people in general, but, speaking about this more specifically, women hear it and they think that there's something wrong with them because they can't do it. And or they think kind of everyone else has it all figured out except them, because that's what the diet industry wants us to believe, that we are inherently broken, right, and that we are not.
Right.
That's how they profit. Yeah. Right. So, okay, one more question. Then also, I just dropped it in the comments. If this is resonating with any of you listening, either live or on the replay, Isabel has an amazing free video series about breaking free from the diet mentality. And that is, I popped the link in there at yourkickasslife.com/Isabel. And I have one more question that it might be something that you go into in the video series, but is, for those women watching this, is what is one thing that women can do to start to overcome the diet mentality if they've been struggling with it either their whole lives or even just a few years?
Yeah. Well, this is going to sound obvious, although it's amazing how little time we actually spend thinking about it when you consider how obvious it really is. But sort of asking yourself, okay, where does diet mentality actually stem from? Diet mentality stems from the fundamental belief that thin is good, as thin as possible is good, and fat is bad, right? Any level of fatness, however I want to define that for myself, is bad, right? And so, again, seems really obvious, seems really, really hard to break, but at the core of this, right, I think it's inevitable. I don't think that anyone can possibly discuss this topic responsibly without being like, this is a body image problem, obviously, right? Like, especially when you're like having conversations about wanting to deny your natural size and denying physical urges, all of those things. Although I think even in the realm of emotional, right, self-denial doesn't work, as we just described with willpower. So even if you aren't in sort of physical danger, I think psychologically, this sort of self-denial pattern that starts with negative body image is really, really problematic. So number one is just like, can I just be in acceptance? Not love, not confidence, not I think I'm so hot, just acceptance. Can I just be in acceptance of where I am today? Can I meet myself where I am today, right? Can I be like, this is the body I'm in. I don't necessarily, right? I mean, I think it's awesome if people want to work towards like, oh, I'm so sexy and loving myself. And I certainly do that work with my clients. But let's just start at square one, right? Square one is, let me just accept where I am today. Can I just be like cool with it the way I'm cool with the fact that the sky is blue, right? Like, I don't need to like that the sky is blue. I just accept that the sky is blue today. This is where my body is today. This is just what's happening. Right. And I'm going to try and treat her well, because after all, she does beat my heart for me. She is like the closest human to me in my life. Right. And actually start to think about my body, like at the very least, right. Think about my body like a human mammal. Think about my body as more than just an object that makes me look a certain way when I'm, trying to impress whoever I might be trying to impress. Right. And that's that's a way of thinking about our bodies that we are not trained into. We are not trained into thinking about our bodies like human animals with heartbeats, with biological needs, with that feel things. I mean, literally, like I pinch myself and I feel it. Like my body is a living, breathing organism that feels things, right? And it is the closest person to me in my life, the only person potentially that will be with me from the day that I'm born until the day I die, right? And this is something that we are just completely dehumanized by, all sorts of horrifying media messages and misogynistic, sexist, I could go down a whole rabbit hole there, right? Stuff that really trains us into just thinking of ourselves as one thing, objects that are supposed to make us look a certain way, in order to, basically acquire social status. Now, again, I think it's awesome that there's so much work being done to try and change beauty standards in this culture, and the body positivity movement is really picking up steam, and I love being a part of that in my work and all sorts of things. But I think especially for people who are really in it and really, really in the struggle, first things first, like I wouldn't even worry about changing your beauty standards right now. What I would worry about is actually starting to think about yourself as a human rather than an object to be, like kind of molded to your will.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I would start.
I love that. I absolutely love that tool. And I'm so glad that you said that, because I agree. I think that going from where a lot of people are in the present moment to this place of body love and even self-love can be just like jumping over the Grand Canyon. It's like, this is going to be a hike. This is going to be a long hike for you, and making that choice. Do you want to stay where you are, where it's pretty miserable, or do you want to step into this kind of uncomfortable and possibly messy work of learning to do it? And again, that very first step is learning to just see yourself as a human. I love that you said that. And body acceptance before self-love. Even I think for many, because I talk a lot about self-kindness over here and self-compassion, I have many times said, self-acceptance before self-kindness, because it can seem so foreign, to speak to yourself kindly, or to actually like look in the mirror and be like, I look amazing. I love that girl.
Totally.
It's so far away. It's so far away. It's like climbing Mount Everest in 2 days. You're not going to do it.
Right.
And
exactly
there didn't jump. And if they told you that it happened quickly, I'm sorry, but they're lying.
Exactly. And I think, that's why I'm so glad that there are, coaches like you and like so many different programs and all sorts of things that are coming about that really kind of break down. This is a process, guys. Like this is, Everest wasn't, Rome wasn't built in a day. This is going from all of the internalized sort of shame and pressure and expectation that have been put on us since we were basically born, most women, right? And P.S., this is not your fault, right? Like this is some trauma that has literally been just continuously happening to you since you were very young. And we are just starting to do the work of unpeeling that sort of diet-related, body shame-related trauma. And it is a process, right? And so, number one is sort of meet yourself where you are. Like, can you even just begin to maybe have a different concept of what body love even means, right? Like, does it even necessarily have to mean I look in the mirror and like think I'm a goddess? Might it even just mean, wow, recognizing that I have a heartbeat, right? And that like I'm a human. So I think that, that's super, super important.
Great place to start. Awesome. I love this conversation. And for anybody that this resonated with, I popped that in the comments. You can go to yourkickasslife.com/Isabel. And I also had asked Isabel before we started recording, if people have questions about that video series, if they aren't sure, where to start or anything like that, you are open to email, right? Just having people shoot you an email through the website. There's, I'm sure, a place to do that, on when they're getting the emails from you about the video series. You can hit reply if this is something that you are just dipping your toes in, or if it's something that you have, this has been a journey for you. I really invite you to go check out that page, yourkickasslife.com/Isabel, to see if it's right for you. Thank you so much for being here again to talk about this. I love that I have you in my back pocket for this particular topic, because it's not something I venture into a whole lot. And I'm glad that I have you as my go-to expert on this topic.
Happy to be here to be the go-to expert on this topic. I've been doing this work for many years now, and it's super, super passionate about helping women with this particular issue. I know it's so prevalent. So many women have a story around this. And I just want to be there if you're struggling with diet binge cycling, binge eating, because it's a big thing for lots of people, but also just diet mentality, restrictive stuff. I often say, right, my video training series says I help women stop feeling crazy around food, right? The obsession, all of these sort of this pressure and just expectation, all these things that come around with us that make making choices around food so difficult and so overwhelming. I really encourage you all to check out my video training series on Andrea's page, and it's free, so might as well.
$0, so you can't go wrong there. And everyone, thank you so much for being here live. And I know many of you are watching the replay. Thank you for catching the replay. And I will be here next Thursday at noon Eastern time on another topic. And until then, I will see you out in cyberspace. Bye-bye.